Welcome to She Says with your host, Stephanie Regalado. She Says guests share stories from their challenges to successes and, most importantly, the journey of womanhood woven alongside the collaboration of sisterhood. From self, love, friends and family, to hot topics, career, and worldviews, Stephanie and her guests discuss matters with utmost openness and honesty. So let's hear what she says. Here's Stephanie.
Excellent. Hi, and welcome to She Says. I'm Stephanie Regalado, your host. I am thrilled to have Yolonde Powell Collins with me. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie.
So we met just over a year ago in probably February through email, and then in February for a photo shoot for the Women in Business Leadership Awards, because you were being honored for the awards through the Catalyst business section of Spoken Courtly and Living magazine. And we as women often do, no matter what the setting is, sometimes we just attract right to one another and we start spilling our lives out. We want to know, like, the jobs that we do and the work that we do and the people that we care for and that we love. And you shared a bit of your story with me then, and it really did set me back on my heels. It's funny, I think last week someone had put on Facebook, there was a couple, and they said, we've been through more in 6 years than most people go through in their lifetime. And I think one of the gravest errors we can do is ever think that our pain surpasses anyone else's or supersedes or is grander or anything, because it's not good for us and it's not good for our view of those around us and our sensitivities. But you, my dear, have quite a mighty story, and it could be up there and find its way to the top of horrors for a mother in particular, just like any other. So take us back at what happened. It was 2004.
Yes. 2004, we arrived in Spokane from Hawaii, and my relationship didn't work out, and I was in a bitter family law case, which is very sad. A lot of people are going through that. And I finally received primary custody of my son, and then just a few years later, in 2008, I was getting my little boy ready to go and stay with his dad for his 2 weeks away from me and my daughter. And that was in 2008, Christmas, and that was the last time my son was ever home. And then from that, allegations occurred that were never founded, that I had abused my child. And from that point on, it was a nightmare. And
how old was he at that time?
He was 5.
Okay.
Was 5. And my daughter not only lost her brother, but I lost my child. And then we went into the court system, and it was so scary. I didn't know what I was doing. And I had some funds to get an attorney, and they assisted me. And then from that on, it finally ended last year. But during that time, we were in supervised visitations for close to 10 years. And the first 5 were just horrendous, because when you go in there with the allegations against you, even though they were never founded, we were never allowed to hug my son, hold his hand, no contact whatsoever. And it was very emotional. I didn't know how to handle it. And then also, when CPS is not involved and it's just family law, you are the responsible parent that has to pay for the fee. So it was very, very expensive to see your child, and I had to make contact with him to see him at least once a week. And from that on, I was a chef at Fairchild Air Force Base, and I was always going to the courthouse when I could no longer afford an attorney, and I'd be in my chef coat in the clerk's office, and the clerks knew me all the time. I'd be there almost every day to get my file. And then the airmen that I worked with at the base and a lot of my civilian coworkers were like, Yolonde, you need to go to school. Yeah. You need to do something. You need to learn what happened to you. Mm-hmm. And they motivated me and pushed me, and then I pursued my education for a paralegal degree at Spokane Community College. And with that, I started interning at the courthouse, and then after a year had passed, the very office that I'd always walk into every day on the other side of the counter, I was now employed there.
Oh, wow.
And it was such an honor. And then I was moved over to juvenile. And in juvenile, we see everything that happens with children in our community and with families. And at first, I didn't know how to handle it because it was so close to home. I'd see the same attorneys that had worked on my cases. And it was very hard. And also...
And you're sitting in the courtroom?
I'm sitting in the courtroom. I'm the court clerk.
So you're reporting... or
journalizing and recording everything that's happening. And I would get very angry because I'm like thinking, how come Washington State is helping these families but nobody helped me?
Right.
And what was the difference? And finally, after all these years, I learned what the difference was. It was a family law, not a dependency action. So I started learning and watching the people and to see how the system worked behind the scenes, and it was amazing. And all the people there that I work with, from attorneys to our commissioners and judges, I'm just so honored to be there. And it still shocks me to this day that I'm sitting next to these amazing superheroes. Mm-hmm. And from then on, I got exposed to some really horrible things that were happening in our community, and my way of giving back with all the people that had helped me was to go out on the streets and help our homeless and connect with all of these amazing nonprofits and just learn and become involved with our community of how I can help. Yeah. And I've been doing that for close to 5 years now.
Is there any, now that you know everything you know, are there things that you could have done differently had you known in those early years to change the trajectory that you were then put on for almost 10 years?
10 years.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty hard to answer that. I think I used to blame others for what had happened to me, mm-hmm. and hold other people responsible, and I became very negative. And I didn't like who I had become. I was in a very dark place. But then I was like, wait a minute, this isn't who I am. I need to be the one to make that change. Yeah. It's not their responsibility. Whatever has happened. But how am I going to learn from this? And I just have faith and perseverance, and I just never gave up, no matter, even though I was at this institute for close to 10 years, and I'd walk in with my badge from the county, and I'd see the very same parents that I had in a hearing seeing their kids, and I'm seeing mine. Yeah. It was very hard to handle, but then I have to remember my children are going to know one day how hard I worked to unite our family. Mm-hmm. And we were finally united through some amazing attorneys here in Spokane, from Camarina Zurazura to Dennis and Teresa Cronin, Jacqueline Porter and Jen Richards. They saved my family with all the hard work that they put mm-hmm. through the years, so I'm very grateful to them.
I'd love to go back to that, because I've only known you to be one of the most bubbly, happy, smiley, and then contagious and all that people in my life. But then again, I haven't known you that long. So one of the things I was curious about is how through that, because I don't think anyone would question how you could go to a dark place and be negative when you had your child taken away, and then suddenly you're in this situation where everything felt like it was totally out of your control, and you were just told that you don't have access to your son anymore, you can't touch him anymore, and you have to pay to see him. That makes anger build up inside of me. So I wondered what you did. How did you, because I assumed that there were dark moments.
There were. I reached out. I had a good group of people that supported me, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. Yeah. They held me up with strong arms and counseling, and I made it. And then I prayed a lot, and I would have dreams that this would soon be over. And I was like, okay, you're in a really horrible situation. Try to focus on the positive. One day you will be united. And I kept visualizing seeing my son and my daughter together with me. And it happened. We can be in the darkest of places, but it takes for us to be like, okay, do we want to live this way, or do we want to survive it and keep on going? And what do we learn from the struggles?
Right.
And I've learned a lot from the struggles, because I wouldn't be at Spokane County if it wasn't because of what I went through. And now I see how other families have been separated. It could be from drugs to abuse, and it's just like I want to be a part of that and helping to unite them. And that's why I work so hard. And that's why I'm now going to college to attain a BA, so I can be a probation counselor. That's my dream, because I want to help unite children with their parents.
Because the goal most always is reunification of families.
Yes.
And that's the best case scenario. And really, who better a person than someone who has experienced,
who's walked it.
that firsthand. What was it like for your son in those early years? I mean, how do you tell a 5-year-old they can't hug his mom?
It was really hard. The supervisors would tell him, you can't hold your mom's hand, you can't do this. And I remember one time I wasn't even allowed to tie his shoe. And he was like, why can't my mommy tie his shoe? And we were never allowed to talk about what had happened and why he can't come home. And so it was very painful. And I will admit, I did have a lot of nervous breakdowns. Every time I'd walk out with my daughter, we would cry. And then a couple of times my parents came to visit from Europe, and it was very hard on them to walk into this, institution and to see their grandson. And my sister, too, she flew out, and this was the only way my family could see him. And, our law is not perfect. It can be fixed, and that's the faith that I have, is we have a system that does their best to connect families together, and great services, and I'm just grateful.
Well, it
to be
seems
there.
to me, and I'm way out on the outside of this, that there was such an incredible error in the handling of your case.
There was.
In particular.
There was.
I mean, there has to be a way to take this and use it
For the good.
For good to change, because it's just maddening to think of how
That
many other
long
families
go through the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. How have you navigated and maybe come to terms with the anger that you must have felt toward the father of your son, who was the one who...
I actually forgave all of those involved a long time ago. It's the only way that we can move on, because I was holding on to anger, and it will eat you up.
Yeah, that's in part of your darkness, you realize.
And it was part of the darkness. And it was just like, this is my path in life at this time. Someone is showing me this way until I can get onto another path, which is where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And I always tell myself to always smile. It's so healthy. I don't hide anything. I'm very open about what has happened to me, but to always stay positive and always have that in your head that tomorrow is going to be a better day, to never, ever give up, no matter what your circumstances are, from your health to death. Just never give up, and remember that you have these memories that you can cherish. And I'll never get back the past. And sometimes that does make me sad, but then I'm like, wait a minute, don't get sad. Concentrate
have a beautiful
on your
future
with your family.
Exactly. Do you believe that your ex believed the allegations, or that he created them to gain control of the situation?
I don't think he did create. I think it was another party that was affiliated with him. And from then on, they went to start an investigation, which, again, there was no findings.
It was unfounded.
Yes.
But once you get into the system of that way, it's so hard to break out of it,
It's so hard. And a lot of times when allegations are made against one parent, you have to do everything you can to fight it, because once the allegations were made against me, I had to undergo a lie detector test, psychosexual evaluations, and it was very like, oh my goodness. And then I had to be interviewed by a detective. I'm sitting in a police department, and I've never broken the law. I've always believed in rules, and I was like, what's going on here? And to me at that time, I felt like this doesn't happen in America, and I felt like my child was kidnapped from me. And so I have a lot to still be counseled with. But again, it's just the time that we have now is just so precious. And I know there was also a time, it was so hard for me to even just go into Walmart. I couldn't go into stores because I didn't know how to handle seeing parents. I couldn't, sorry.
No.
It was really hard for me to see parents with their little children and holding hands. And I was like, that was taken away from me. And it was like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
But then, again, everybody has things, many stories that they face. And it was just like, how do I deal with my story and turn it into something positive?
Yeah.
And the thing that I can count on is that I know deep down inside my children are proud of me because I've come this far for them.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing no one can ever question. We have to take a quick break.
Okay.
Which is probably good timing for both of us. We are going to take about a minute break and we will be right back.
Welcome to Tom Sawyer Country Coffee.
Tom Sawyer Country Coffee only roasts the finest organic coffee for our signature blends. Enjoy a cup at our coffee shop and local businesses and organizations across the region.
I'm Tom Sawyer and we choose the Pacific Northwest.
Last year alone, Avista customers saved over 53 million kilowatt hours of energy. Enough to power more than 4,000 homes for an entire year. Way to save, everyone. Way to save. Find your way to save at avistautilities.com.
What? You haven't been to the library lately? Stop in today and see that the library is more than books. Spokane County Library District facilities feature on-site technology, including Wi-Fi, computers, and printers, as well as free use of meeting rooms. The Library District offers events and programs for all ages, from story times to career development and employer classes to Social Security workshops. Our staff is well trained and happy to help. Find out more about your library at scld.org.
Hello, welcome back to She Says. I'm Stephanie Regalado, your host, with Yolonde Powell Collins. This is what happens when you have tricky names, which is funny. When I'm going to go have a me time for a second. When I had a second marriage, I was Stephanie Regalado, and then the name of my to-be husband was much shorter, and so many people were like, oh, it's going to be so nice, you're going to have this short, tiny name, and I was like, no, actually, I'm hyphenating it on the end of my name. So then it was like this long, so I had friends that would call me Stephanie Baker's my main name, Stephanie Baker Regalado Hotel, Stephanie Ray Baker Regalado. It's like, how many names can one girl have? Or I was a collector. You were born this way, I think, with 3 names.
Well, Powell is my maiden, and then Collins is my daughter's father's name.
Okay, so you've had one additional name. I like names. They really define. No one's going to get you confused with other Yolandas.
That's true. And there's actually another Yolanda in my class at Whitworth. Oh. So it's like Yolanda and Yo. So our teacher can tell the difference between us. So.
One thing, you mentioned Jacqueline Porter, who's a very good friend of mine as well. I think she's a brilliant attorney. I was so grateful to hear she was stepping in for you last year because I knew SHIT was going to get done when that woman shows up in family court. But she has said to us, you see a lot of people talking about horrible things in the community or horrible things in their lives or whatever, and Jacqueline says you don't know horrible until you've been in the courtroom, until you've been in the court system, and then you hear the true raw nature of humanity unveils itself. What has that been like for you? I know it's inspired you to really plug into the community and start being a light within it.
It has. I started seeing children that needed clothes, and we have a teen closet downstairs to help children. I started getting involved with Solution is Ours, Pure Vita Recovery, Bridget's Cloak, and Sean Kingsbury is the founder of Pure Vita Recovery, which helps people that have addictions with kayaking, doing nature walks, and just doing something different that was really amazing. And then Solution is Ours is Billy Sexton and Rihanna Remington. They started out just passing out lunches, and now every Sunday they serve a hot meal at the House of Charities, barbecues. They do the party trolley on Tuesdays with handing out food to our homeless. They're amazing. And
what's the name of that one?
Solution is Ours.
Okay.
And then Joan Medina of Bridget's Cloak, she's the founder. I love her so much. She goes out late at night with a limited amount of volunteers that we can fit in the car, because our homeless community recognizes her car, and she's been doing it for many years, where we go off of donations and get hot soups served, hygiene products, sleeping bags, whatever we can get to people, especially the ones that can't make it into a shelter at night or don't want to go to a shelter because there's a lot of issues. So
how is that viewed by the community partners who are really pushing get them into services that are kind of being okayed by the city?
I had a wonderful conversation with Sheriff Ozzie, and he made a light bulb go off in my head, and he was telling us how, he doesn't mind giving a hand up, but not a hand out, because what happens is everybody that's not our local homeless comes from all over the country, and then we'll have things like Tent City, like in Portland and Seattle, and hand up is initiating people. Like there's a lot of issues out there, mental health and drugs, but if we can get them to where they have to earn, like housing, you've got to go through these steps and services to earn housing, or to keep your housing. Once you get in, you're there for like 6 months. Keep doing your programs and job training. I just visited Transitions yesterday. Amazing nonprofit.
I love that one.
I love them. They do so much in getting women to go back to school, job training in the kitchen. I believe last year they did groundbreaking for cottages.
Yeah, I wonder how far they are. I need to check into that.
So it's
going to be a whole community, beautiful, with families potentially.
With families, moms and their children.
Yes, right.
So there's a lot of pros and cons. I'm actually doing an essay thesis on this too. That's due on Tuesday. Of the pros and cons of paying or giving a handout. If we give and give, everybody will expect it, and they'll just for example, just sit on the street because they know somebody's going to get them
needs
food.
are being met.
Yes,
where
their
they
needs,
are,
and they're like, this is okay. I'm getting free stuff. I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to change. But then on the other hand, you've got people that want to change, but they just don't know how to get into those services. And there's so many that's provided here in this town.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and one thing, what was it? That I was reading. But I think it's well known that they say that you can't, I know what it was. You can't dream if you're surviving. And so a lot of these people, they're put in these positions of survival on the streets, which can be pretty awful experience. So they can't ever get into a place where they can even hope more for themselves or dream more, or even, gosh, I've realized there are things that I have challenges with, and I have all the resources within my own being, I know, but sometimes walls will come up and stop me, and it just feels so exhausting. So
yeah, same here. When I got sick and I couldn't work for a couple of months, I lost everything. My car was repoed. I was like, oh my gosh, what else is going to happen? And I was bedridden. I couldn't walk, and then I had to go through all of these medical issues, and St. Luke's helped me to walk again. I went from being on a walker to leg brace to now a cane.
And weren't you losing your hair too?
Yes. I had some issues, some brain issues.
Yeah,
so,
your brain was malfunctioning.
It is. It's a little bit better. I can think now. So. And
Good.
I have hair.
I'm glad.
It's
I know
nice.
your hair's
It all came in
amazing.
gray. I was like, what happened?
Well, it's a gorgeous shade of gray. I love how it all makes sense.
Thank you. But there's one lady, she was homeless, who totally changed my life when I was volunteering on the streets. She used to be a teacher, and she shared with me her story of how, she had a normal life, house, and then her husband got sick, and they had to put the house up for mortgage, and then he passed away, and then she lost everything. And she was the neatest person, very well kept, and she said she lost everything in the blink of an eye, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's like me. That's what's happening.
Right.
And it scared me so much, where now I'm doing the very unhealthy thing, and I work 2 full-time jobs because it takes a long time to get back on your feet again.
Yeah, absolutely.
But my thing is like, man, she went through so many things, but she kept her head held up high, and I really hope she got into a place, and I would hope that those same things would be provided to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
how is your relationship with your son now?
Oh my gosh,
full clearance.
It's
full hugs, full everything,
full
time
hugs.
together.
It was amazing. The first time that my daughter Isabella and I had a free dinner with him outside of Fulcrum was at Central Foods, and we were still so used to not being allowed to have our phones out or asking
because
permission.
Your daughter couldn't have any physical connection to him as well, right?
Same, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was just we cried, and it was,
how has he been with that?
Have
you guys talked at all about? Has he had curiosities that you can now speak freely of, or do you?
We talk. Well, when we drive by Fulcrum, he gives them the bird.
Gotta love 15-year-old boys.
I was like, oh,
keeping
shame.
it run real.
Yeah, he finally has opened up. He didn't really care for it as much, but it was all we knew, and it was our only way. But now it's just like all of that's behind us, and you know we've still got a long way to go, but at least we can go together.
Yeah, absolutely. Sadly, we have to wrap things up. I am super curious though. If you had if your life was a snow globe and you shook it up and all the pieces fell back down together, what would be different right now? I mean, there's been so many pieces in the air in your snow globe for so long that are just settling in, and you're going for your BA. There's so many things going on, but do you feel like at this point in this moment that there's anything, if you could wave a magic wand, you could zap into your life or change?
Yes, with what had happened in 2004, I wish it would have went differently, and we could have worked things out somehow. But then again, I already had that journey, and it brought me here. And if it hadn't, I probably just would have stayed in a kitchen forever and be a mom to.
Well, it's hard because you don't want to say you're grateful for bad things, but I think you can get to a point where you can see the silver linings, and you can see the beauty, and you can see the power that you gain through that, and through you just getting up every day and facing the day, the energy that provides to other people, and the hope that provides to other people to not give up and to keep going.
Yep.
And now that you are able to share moving forward, you still have a lot of years left. Your kids still have so much life left. So it's a beautiful thing, and I'm excited to continue watching all of that blossom together, and I feel really good about living in a community where you have the heart for others because of your own hurt, and you're turning that into
Stephanie.
good. So thank you so much for joining me here, and you will come back on again someday, and we'll check in with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yo. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning into She Says. We will see you next week.
She Says is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content.